Happy Thursday, everyone. I hope you are enjoying this very rainy Thursday, but we are here and we have such an excellent guest with us today, and we're super excited to dive into business strategies and learn all about him. But first, I want to say hello and welcome my wonderful co-host, Megan. How are you doing, Megan?
I'm great. I am, I'm trying to combat the gloom,
Mhm.
It's okay. It's still a lovely day out.
It
Yeah.
is. You can make any day lovely. And look, I mean, the background, at least you have all the plants and it looks like maybe sun shining in. It's really like manifesting something. So, and
Lions
then
Day.
Michael, how are you doing today? How are you on this Thursday?
I'm great. This is for me. This is the end of the day. I'm in North Carolina, so it is. I get to wrap up my day with the both of you, which is very exciting, and I get to talk about stuff which I love to talk about, which is that's the added bonus.
Perfect. I'm glad that you got to end the day with us. We feel special. So thank you for taking the time to be here with us. And we will just dive right on in. Michael, we want to learn about you, your background, and how AEC business strategies got started and some of the services you may offer for manufacturers.
Sure. So I'll start with a little bit of the personal. So 30 odd years ago, I started off as an engineer and realized that I was probably uh, well, my wife says I was a reverse engineer because I like to, just tinker with things. I was probably a terrible engineer because I liked the business side of the business and the people side of the business a whole lot more than I like the engineering side of the business. Which, if you know any engineering organizations, that probably made me a fish out of water in many respects. But we were big businesses, right? So I was working for a company in New York. Our one office had an operating budget of, I don't know, $25 million a year, right? At a certain point, that's big business. But there was not a focus on the business side of it. You had engineers who were running the business. Engineers, I don't want to insult all engineers. Engineers typically are not necessarily the best business people. They're really smart. They're really good about things like process, but not the best business people. So I went a whole different direction. Went to business school. Um, Really got involved on the people side of things and the business side of things, and did that for a lot of years. About 8 years ago, I was running a program for the Transportation Authority in New York, which is the largest transportation agency in North America. They have 70,000 employees. They have a capital budget every year of about $6 billion with a B. And they brought me in to work with the contractors who wanted to work in their capital program, but weren't really large enough because the small projects in an agency like that are $20 million. So even for a small company, they were way beyond them in terms of capacity, and financial capacity, organizational capacity, operational capacity. It's just like, so we started working with them on their business building skills, and we had a program of about 300 contractors doing everything from business assessments with them, strategy, helping them figure out how do they scale up, how do they start to right size, how do they start to say no to certain things because they were saying yes to everything, and often that is a recipe for disaster. So I was working there for about 2 years, left, I guess maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and started my own company. Actually, didn't start my own company. My wife already had the company. She had her own company starting in 2004, and I have been running the business side of her business since it started. So I come at this from organically in terms of running business and understanding the issues and challenges that go along with small business. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I left, joined her. So I have, as I affectionately like to say, I have a boss at home and I have a boss at work. It's the same person. But the work I do with my clients really starts to fall into three different categories. I do a lot of training. mostly with technical organizations in the construction and engineering space. And that is typically around things like management and leadership and, you know, everything, what we call soft skills, right? So difficult conversations, giving and receiving feedback, coaching skills, right? Because at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm also a coach. So I coach businesses on their business operations, and I coach executives, on whatever issues they're bringing to the table. And then the last part is around the consulting, which I do with large and small businesses around supplier diversity, some human resource stuff, so a whole variety, mixed bag of things. But most everything I do starts to fall into sort of that technical realm of working with technical professionals, helping them become more effective, more efficient, better communicators, and helping the businesses really start to think more globally and more strategically, right? The idea about having to be able to say, not having to, wanting to say no to certain things, because there is always a choice. If you're saying yes to something, you have to say no to something else. So helping business owners start to think about, is this the right opportunity at the right time for the right purpose?
Wow.
You took the word right out of my mouth. I also wanted to say, wow.
I know.
Yeah, Michael, wow, that's a lot. Like, you're doing a lot, but really, I feel like there's a mindset coaching for these high level executives that can really help them propel their business forward in those technical aspects, which is, I think, huge.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And the fact that you like 180, you completely kind of like shifted gears, but that's really cool to like learn when you're like, oh, I'm going to be an engineer. And you're like, what are they like missing? Like, what aspect is this missing that I am really good at? I'm going to switch gears and then go do that. And I think that that is really, really cool and empowering. And also just learning to say no. I think even us internally, we have that, it's like, you can't say yes to everything. You need to know like what you can say no to and what you can say yes to. And so it's really, really powerful.
Yeah. And I think that, it's no is this little 2-letter word, and we think it's like a binary, right? It's like yes or no. And often it's the nuance, right? No has a lot of meanings, right? So you can say no, and no can mean no, right? Just purely no. It can be no, not the way you're proposing it. No, not at this time frame, right? No can mean a lot of different things, but if we are just sort of giving it that short, succinct no, right, we lose some of the context. And I think that from a business owner's perspective, right, context and nuance is our best friend, right? We have to provide that in order for our clients and our suppliers and our vendors to really get a more fulsome understanding of what we're trying to convey. And I think that that's, you going back to, what you were saying about making that transition from being an engineer to what I'm doing now. That is often the piece that is lost. The engineers are really smart. They're highly trained. They can solve problems. Often where they start to have some challenges is in how do they communicate that to, downstream, to the client, to their, to whoever it may be. And I think that I found that for me, that was a nice sweet spot, right? That I was able to have those conversations, both the technical conversations as well as the business and sort of human side of the conversation as well. And I've always found that I've always been a little bit of like the interpreter, right? The go-between between the technical folks and the non-technical. Everyone needs one.
No, I love that you found your sweet spot. It sounds like you found like what you're really good at, and now you're able to give that to others and give them that expertise that they're lacking to help them grow and thrive. And that kind of leads very nicely into the next question is, we know you talk about like the importance of strategic planning. Can you elaborate how you help manufacturers define their strategy that will help manufacturers, achieve growth in their business and their company?
So, it's an interesting growth is right. Growth is an interesting concept in and of itself, right? Because one of the things that I talk about, because I work with a lot of small companies that are looking to grow, and I have to remind them that growth for the sake of growth is the mantra of a virus. A virus just wants to replicate, right? So it doesn't care, right? It just wants to get bigger and bigger and bigger. For a small business, medium-sized business too, growth without having some forethought, without doing it strategically, can put a business out of business, right? Because sometimes too much growth, uncontrolled growth is worse than no growth at all. So when you start to think about the strategic planning component of it, it's really about the planning is the secondary piece, the goal setting, getting a clear understanding of what you want to achieve, in what time frame. Why do you want, right? Why you sort of getting to your why. I'm a big fan of, I'm going to promote somebody else's book here. But Simon Sinek's book, which is Start with Why, is really where I start with my clients in talking about what their growth is, because they've got to understand what their why is. Why are they doing it in the first place? And once they figure out the why, everything else starts to fall into place, because the what and the how is a little bit of, I don't want to say it's easy. It's easier, but understanding their why, what's their purpose, what are they trying to achieve, makes the strategic planning piece that much easier, right? So what are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? Does it start to fit into your business model? Does it start to fit into what you're trying to achieve? So whether you are, whatever you are manufacturing, whether you are, and I guess I can be a little bit, behind the scenes a little bit. Right before we got on, we were talking about the stereotype of manufacturing. Right, manufacturing is not just assembling cars. Right, it is everything from the food industry to clothing manufacturing to whatever accessories. Manufacturing is we got to think a little more broadly about what manufacturing is, and then starting to think about what that focus is, right? What is the end goal? Because, from an engineering perspective, we like to think about process. I start at the end and then like to work backwards, because when you start at the end, what you're trying to achieve, and then figuring out what do you need to do in order to achieve it is becomes the building blocks, but you already have planted that flag out there for this is what I want to achieve, and hopefully you're ascribing some time frame to it. So it's the SMART goals, right? Specific, what do I need to do? Specific, measurable, attainable, real time, relevant, time bound. You start to build those metrics around what you're trying to achieve. Strategically, you are making decisions that are much better for your business and really as a business owner, and for your employees and for your customers and for your clients. It just becomes a much better decision all the way around.
Yeah, totally. I think that having that backwards planning and being able to fit it in, break it down, make it digestible. I like to just even think of that, right? Because you can have this big lofty goal and it can feel like a bit overwhelming sometimes. But if you break it down, it really can make it seem a little easier.
Yeah. Well, that's the joke about how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One of my favorite lines.
Yeah. So the more and listen, I am a I spent most of my career in engineering and project management and business operations, and my overarching philosophy is make it as simple as possible. Right. The simpler you can make it, the more easy it is to explain it to somebody, the easier it's going to be for somebody to execute on smaller pieces than to drop a huge plan on their plate and say, all right, go ahead. And it becomes paralyzing, right? You're not doing yourself, your company, your employees, you're not doing them any favors by taking that approach.
Totally.
Absolutely. And I really like the way that you were going into like the growth without the why, because I feel like that is a lot. I mean, you start a business and you're like, I just want to grow, grow, grow. But if you don't have the why, like you said, it can get messy. And so the fact that you just kind of do it in reverse before you even start the strategic plan, you really start from the beginning and start the roots, because you're like, you can't even start the strategic plan until you go back to your values and your strategy and like go back and then really develop it from there. So really appreciate you going into that.
And I, I laugh because now I'm a business owner, right? So I'm on the other side. I'm on the other side of the equation now.
Right.
And being a small business owner is, well, I would say any business owner, right? Until you get to a point where like you're publicly traded and we're not talking about that, but business ownership is not for the faint of heart, right? You don't right. You don't get to turn it off at 5 o'clock, right? It is constantly running in the back of your head, and if you're thinking about like, oh, I just want to earn enough money to survive or to do the things I want to do, there are a lot easier ways to do it than being a business owner. Yeah. Right? So you have to have a stiff backbone to really decide to go into business ownership, because you have employees, you have risk, you have everything that goes along with it. Lots of other easier ways to make a living than to be a business owner.
A lot of hats. You got to wear a lot of hats. Yep. I'm feeling you right now. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say Megan knows. Lots of hats, and you never have time for anything. It just seems like you're always doing so many things and you just don't have the time. You really got to break that down.
Gotta do the next thing. Yeah.
Right.
Do the next thing. I feel
so I wanted to dive into business development. Can you share some of your effective strategies or tactics that you might recommend to manufacturers that you work with?
So it's a great question, because I did business development, and I was talking to a client earlier today about business development purely by happenstance. And every organization has somebody who does business development, and they forget that the people who are closest, probably best suited to really do your business development, are the people who are closest to the work, right? So your business development people who are maybe going out and talking to potential clients, right? They can have those conversations, but the best way to develop work to get more business is to do good business, to do good work for your clients, because it is infinitely easier and less expensive to get more work by doing good work, because you want the repeat customers, right? If you can get a customer who goes back over and over and over again, all of a sudden the cost to acquire that, the cost to there we go. The cost to acquire that work becomes much smaller, which means you become more profitable, right? At the end of the day, no matter what kind of business you're in, right? You're in business to make money, right? I'm a capitalist at heart. I coach business owners. I tell them all the time, don't be ashamed of wanting to earn money, to make profit, right? Because otherwise, you would be a 501c3 or something, some other designation. So that's the first lesson, I think, is the best way to get more work is to do good work for your clients. What I often hear about is sort of like a 4 for 4 performance, right? We need to do things on time, on budget, safely, client satisfaction. In many respects, that's table stakes, right? You've got to do that no matter what. I talk about from a business owner perspective, think about 4 for 4 in terms of being competent, qualified, responsive, and responsible. So doing the right work, right? Not taking on work that you shouldn't be taking on, and having the confidence to do it, right? So you're doing it competently, you're qualified to do it, right? So you have the expertise to do it. You're responsive, right? So when a client calls, you actually respond, you answer, you pick up your phone, you answer the emails. I am always surprised at how many emails just go into the ether, right? That never get responded to, or phone calls that like you can leave message after message and no one ever returns. So being responsive and being responsible, and being responsible means that you're attentive to the needs of your client, right? You're not sort of going off the reservation. You are squarely in there with them, and it's a relationship, right? So we got to think about this in terms of it is not transactional, it is relational, right? So when we think about developing business, we want to partner with our clients. We don't want it just to be a contractual, well, you're ordering 1,000 widgets and we're going to deliver 1,000 widgets. It's how can we deliver in a way which is going to be beneficial for you as the client and your customers, right? Because they've got customers downstream. You're making something for them. They're then going to turn around and they've got customers that they've got to work with. So, right. So it becomes much more, it's mindset in terms of shifting from it's just being transactional. We're building something for you, or we're manufacturing something for you, to how do we start to develop this relationship where we know that we're going to provide you with something that is going to be beneficial to your customers, because everyone's got a customer, and then being able to then provide that insight and feedback to your client that's going to help them be more successful downstream as well.
Also, I wanted to go back to the first thing you said about doing good work, and actually really all of the things that you kind of followed up with: the responsiveness, the responsibility, excuse me, that relational aspect of things. Referrals also come from all of those things, right? So it's not just that return customer, which is great. It's that ideally those customers are even telling people that they know that are in that same space.
Yeah. There's a great movie that highlights this perfectly, which is I guess it's probably about 20 years ago already. Donnie Brasco, which was really about organized crime, but he talks about the concept of this is my friend versus this is our friend, right? So you get to that point where someone's introducing you as this is our friend, right? This is somebody who has worked with us, not just worked with me. I'm willing to put my stamp of approval on this person, but right, this is somebody who is fundamentally part of our system, somebody who we would recommend to our best friend, our best client, somebody down the street who needs a manufacturer, right? Once you get to that point where, as a vendor, as a partner, someone is willing to put their stamp of approval beyond just, right, they've done work for me, you're on that path to really accelerated success.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, you really need to prioritize your clients to keep making money. Like that's something you really need to prioritize and cherish to keep them coming back. And essentially, I love the way you said it. You said, do good, like doing good work. I don't know, I'm like gonna forget, but it's basically like doing good work. You're going to continue to get more sales. You said it so beautifully. Now I can't remember. Good. I'm going to go back because I wanted to highlight that moment because I love the way you said it. And now I've just like lost it. But doing good work is going to lead to good work.
Right. The best way to get new work is to do good work.
Yes. Thank you. That is what I was trying. Thank you.
It was another one too. It was like uncontrolled growth is worse than no growth.
No growth. Right.
Yeah. That was also a really good one.
Yeah. It is. We overcomplicate things sometimes, right? It's like we want to I'm a simple person, right? It's like, I admit it. I am just like, give me one thing at a time. My wife tells me all the time that, like, she's like, oh, you can't multitask. She's like, which is probably true. And from a scientific perspective, we don't actually multitask. We do one thing at a time. We toggle between things really quickly. But, keep it simple, right? If you can make it simpler, because the more you complicate things, the more things can go wrong.
Exactly.
Absolutely. You said it way better than me. So thank you for reading that again. Now, one of our last questions, I wanted to dive into your leadership and your coaching that you offer. So how can Alaska manufacturers and small business leaders foster a strong, cohesive team? I think that over the past few years, there's been just a lot of different hiring and retention that's kind of been going along, and a lot of manufacturers have been hurting. So what are just some different tips to keeping a good collaborative team?
It is building teams is probably that is the hardest part for any manager or leader. And I think that we are starting to see we're pulling at the seams a little bit in terms of that concept, because regionally it changes, but when you start to look at the macro economy, we are at under 4% unemployment in this country, right? Which means that we are essentially at full employment, and that may differ, right? Alaska may be different than other parts of the state. Alaska may have different challenges, right? It may be more difficult to get people to move to Alaska than it would be to North Carolina. Right now, North Carolina, when we moved here, we were looking for someplace that was 3 seasons outdoors. We did not realize that the three seasons would be the fall, the winter, and the spring, because the summers here are brutally hot. You don't really want to be outside. It's not quite as bad as being in Texas, but so to get people to want to move to Alaska, and deal with winters where the sun is going to height of the winter, right? Sundown is what, 3 o'clock ish, right? And
sometimes before that.
So you're dealing with short days, right? It's like there are other issues that come into play when you're starting to think about the hiring process, and then most organizations, right? When I think about the coaching perspective and the work I do with leaders, they are very focused on hiring people, and then they forget about them and don't think about the retention piece, because I do a lot of work in the construction industry. In the construction industry, the average tenure is under 4 years. So people don't stay, right? They're not long term. And then I'll have somebody say, well, I've worked here for 20 years. And I go, yeah, you've worked there for 20 years, but you're going to hire somebody who's going to come and then leave in less than 2 years, right? That's just, the numbers just start to work out. You're dealing with differences in terms of generational, the generational component. I am squarely Gen X. I grew up in a whole different environment than my kids who are 23 and have a whole different attitude about work-life balance, what they want out of jobs, what they're trying to, right? It's just a whole different mentality, and it's different than the people who I started to work for, who were, late, early boomers, or had, were significantly older than I was. So we have to think about how are those generational and demographic changes impacting the way we address and think about workforce, and when you're talking about manufacturing, or construction, or some other industries where, when COVID hit 4 years ago, we didn't stop working, right? Manufacturers didn't stop working 4 years ago, right? They just had to be really creative about how they, really creative about how they did their work. Construction, right? Same kind of thing. So, right, coming out of that, we were not industries where we said, oh, you can work from home, right? We are not work from home kind of industries, which means that you have to do other things to engage your workforce. And sometimes that's really just starting to tap into what do they want, why do they want it, and how do we start to address that? Because we industry, in a larger context, we make the mistake of thinking, well, we're paying them, right? They're getting a paycheck. That should be right. That should be enough, right? We're paying them, they get benefits, right? That should be enough. The reality is that organizational behavior, which is probably, if I had to only take one class in all of business school, it would have been organizational behavior. What motivates people? What motivates people are not the digits on their paycheck. What motivates people are they want to like the people they work with. We spend more time with the people we work with in most cases than we do with our actual families. So they want to like the people they work with. They want to be, it may be about recognition. It may be about having access to decision makers. It may be having some input. It may be, right, it could be lots of different things. It may be around having some autonomy, right? Autonomy comes in a whole different flavors and stripes, right? Autonomy over time, over task, over team. So when we start to think about team, who do I want to surround myself with? Who's going to make everybody else better, right? Because it's not, we want to make sure that our team is greater than the sum of the parts. And often, right, we will, and I've been in that position too, as being a leader or a project manager, we will let things go because we're afraid that we won't be able to replace somebody, and that one person is toxic to the rest of the team. And if you let that one toxic person, you leave them all, on their own to keep doing what they're doing, you're going to chase the other people away, right? So sometimes it's making those hard decisions or having those hard conversations and letting people know that, like, this is not acceptable, right? This is not the way we do things around here. And if you're gonna, right, and if you can't understand that, then we're gonna have to have some maybe a more difficult conversation. But yeah, the retention piece often is sometimes subtract, addition by subtraction. You can do really well by sometimes by taking somebody out of the equation and out of the team because they just don't fit, right? They're not in the right seat. So making sure that we're putting people in the right seat for them to be successful is almost as important as saying, well, I need somebody who can do this particular skill set. In most cases, we are too conscious of finding somebody who's got the exact right skill set instead of saying, how is this person going to fit? Mm-hmm. And we can teach them most of the things they need to know. But if they can't fit, if you don't want to have lunch with that person every single day, the likelihood is that it's not going to be a successful partnership, a successful team.
I love all of that. And just to touch on our team, we went from a team of 2 to a team of 6. And I'm pretty sure the last 3 people on our team were recruited for the team. Even my part-time job, I'm a fitness coach, and I was recruited for that position. So it's so important nowadays, especially with the workforce shortage right now, like really finding the people that is going to support what you're doing is
fit in the team, right? Instead of just and I liked this, sometimes it's addition by subtraction. Like sometimes you might not have somebody that is a good fit and you're just hiring anybody that meets the whatever you're looking for, but they're not actually meeting the team and what they want. And I also really enjoyed how you said, it's all about what they prioritize. And if we're not, motivated by the numbers, we're motivated by the team environment and what we're doing and the value the business has. And when you start really looking at it that way, I think that'll make it a lot easier when you're looking to hire and to grow that team as well.
Yeah. And now I've seen it in larger companies. Some of your manufacturers may be pretty sizable. They may have human resource departments. I mean, I've worked with companies where there's no human resource department, and some where there's like, it is so rigid that the person in human resources is saying, I need somebody, and this is the criteria. And, and invariably it starts with, this person needs to have a college degree. And I think we're starting to get off of that position of like, right, these are jobs that need to have a college degree. And in many cases, they don't. It's just become, over time, it's been sort of baked in. And so your human resource people sometimes they're looking at it purely from the four corners of the resume, as opposed to saying, tell me what this person needs to be doing, right? Tell me, give me a little more sense of like, how do they start to fit in? Because transferable skills, we miss opportunities because we don't necessarily think about transferable skills, right? So, you're working part-time as a fitness coach, that the skills that you're dealing with there and who your client is there are transferable to lots of other areas, but we wouldn't necessarily think about it if you have somebody who's just sitting in an HR office who's like, nope, we need somebody with a college degree. We need somebody who's got 12 years of experience. And you go, right. There are a lot of people who've got 12 years of experience. It's really 1 year of experience 12 times over, as opposed to somebody who's moved up and had different jobs and different responsibilities. And all of a sudden they've got a much broader skill set that can really be applied in a much more beneficial way.
We like to do lots of things in this generation.
Yep. We don't like to stay put too long. We like to, really get that fast.
Gotta have all these different lives going on.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
No, this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I know we're a little over time, but I want to thank you so much for being here. I think we learned a lot. If anyone wants to get in touch with Michael, please reach out to us at the Alaska MVP and we will get you in touch with them. If you're interested in his coaching and his training, we will happily get you in touch with Michael, and he will be linked at the bottom and we will share it as well. So thank you guys so much for joining us this Thursday. And thank you so much, Michael, for taking the time to be here. We do this every other Thursday, so stay tuned in 2 weeks and we'll be back.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, guys.